Welcome everybody. This is the video lecture for Unit 1, Introduction to Government and Politics. We will be discussing the definitions of politics, governance, and we are going to talk about this idea of governance. So let's begin. So the three terms, politics, government, and governance, exist together in our introduction unit. And for students of external studies taking introduction to government and politics, your study guide sort of provides you an overview into this concept here. But in this lecture, I would like to bring about examples and even support whatever discussions there is in the study guide, and at the same time sort of summarize important themes that I believe will help us understand this unit here. So let's begin by looking at the definition of what politics is. So as I have here the definition of politics according to this lecture slide, the politics is the process of making decisions that apply to members of a group. It involves activities associated with governance, but also includes the distribution of powers and resources. So here we see politics as activities that are associated with governance, and we haven't talked about governance yet. We will be talking about governance in the later part of this video. So as per your study guide, you turn to page 1 of your study guide and you will see the subheading titled Politics, the Essence of Human Activity here. So it gives you about 4 definitions of what politics is, and I would like to sort of stress on these definitions here and at the same time give examples as well. The first definition of what politics is an activity of gathering according to your book or the study guide. The second is reconciliation of social disagreements, okay, and the third is politics is the distribution of good things people desire, such as wealth, comfort, safety, prestige, and recognition. And lastly, politics is the authoritative allocation of values or the things in life that people desire. Okay, if you turn to page 2, and that continues, the fact that winners in a conflict, that is those who succeeded in mobilizing support for the project. So politics tend to help those who succeeded in, for example, projects. But I will point us to an example here. Let's look at the case of betting, okay, and Pacific racing. Okay, it's very popular in Papua New Guinea, where a lot of people and youths today sort of engage in this betting tips, trying to bet for the NRL games and other football games that is provided by the Pacific Racing. So take Pacific Racing at Boroko Forma. You and your 3 friends wanted to place a bet or tips on the game, NRL game of Broncos versus the Dolphins. So according to our definition here, politics is a collective activity, number 1 on page 2. That is, and in our example here, you gather your friends, and about 3 of your friends, you come into a small gathering and started talking about the game. So what you are doing here is that you are engaging in this activity of gathering and maintaining support for the particular intention to place your bet. So that fulfills number 1. Number 2 is, after gathering support and talking about the game, okay, you and your friends, okay, must reconcile on the bet in which you will put your tips on. So, for example, you and your friends decided to put 13 plus for Broncos. That is the process of reconciliation of social disagreements, covered in the second aspect of the definition according to your textbook. And the third definition is that politics is the distribution of goods and services, distribution of goods and services. But for our example here, you have already reconciled the 13 plus for the Broncos. Then you allocate your 5 kina to one of your friends to go and stand in line to bet. That is an example of the distribution of your wealth, or the goods, or the value of that 5 kina that you have. And then you allocate, pardon me, and then you place the bets, and finally you wait for the game, and whichever outcome of the game comes, you accept the outcome of the game. If you win, then winner takes whatever amount of money that you win. So that the process itself and the example gives you an idea of what politics is. Now let's look at what government is. So government, according to our lecture slide here, is the system or a group of people governing an organized community, often a state. So establish and administers public policy and exercise political control, political authority over distribution or jurisdiction, pardon me. So what you're seeing here is that government is an institution. So you can say government is the formal framework for politics. So according to the page 3 of your study guide, there are three components of the concept of government according to your study guide. Number one is the government is a specialized activity. Number two, government make political decisions binding on the members of the society. Number three, government are at the top of the political decision making. For example, let's look at COVID-19. Okay, COVID-19 is a public health issue. So government makes collective decisions. So governments around the world had to make rapid, complex decisions about how to respond to COVID-19 crisis. And this is the same for Papua New Guinea as well. So these include decisions on lockdown measures. The government of Papua New Guinea have been vocal about lockdown and then rolling out of vaccination, and public health guidelines such as washing your hands, 1.5 meters distance, wearing of face masks. This is an example of political decisions, okay, that is binding on the society. Okay. Now, once the government decided on specific RADA, this is an example of the first government being a specialized activities and make political decisions. So in our examples here about COVID-19, once the government decided on specific COVID-19 measures such as mandatory vaccination for certain workers or travel restrictions, these decisions become binding on all members of the society. So citizens were required to comply to these rules, illustrating that government's roles again here in imposing binding decisions. Okay. Now, how does the other definition of monopoly on the use of force as per our definitions on page 3 and 4 here? So to enforce COVID-19, for example, COVID-19 measures, government exercise their authority, which can include the law's use of force. So the police are out on the street, patrolling the street, ensuring that there is no public gathering. Okay. An example would be penalties for violating lockdowns. Fines will be included for not wearing masks, and other legal measures to measures compliance with health regulations. This demonstrates the government's enforcement or the use or monopoly of the laws, as an example. Now, the last one is talking about the top level political decision making. So, for our example here, the Papua New Guinea government, often took the lead in coordinating pandemic responses. This exemplifying its position at the top level of political decision making. So this included deploying of national resources such as military assistance in distributing vaccines or federal aid, economic recovery as in Papua New Guinea, in trying to coordinate this decision making. So these decisions making are at the top level. So these are examples of what government does. So basically a government is an institution. With that institution, it is tasked to deliver and tasked to operate in a specialized entity, making collective decisions. These decisions are binding on us as citizens and provide wide-ranging implications for societies, backed by the authority to enforce these decisions lawfully. So all these explanation sums up what a government is. So government is basically an institution that exercise political authority over a jurisdiction, and we've gone through that in our example on COVID-19. Now, what are the differences between government and governance, the idea of governance? While government refers to formal institutions, governance extends beyond to include informal process. The process is talking about the governance itself. So according to our lecture slide here, governance encompasses not only formal government institutions but also informal processes, actors, and structures that contribute to decision making and policy implementation. So governance extends beyond to include informal processes and actors contributing to decision making and policy implementation. The process in which government follows to carry out its businesses, for example, in Papua New Guinea, the following factors affect the function of the government, and that is found on your page 5 of your study guide. The page 5 is the factors that affect the process of government is, according to Peter Lamar, is unaccountable and informal decision-making process. When our government does not make accountable and formal decision-making so that the public can be aware of, then that affects the government process. So it affects the governance process. Secondly is our cultural tradition tend to affect. It restrains individual initiative and make it difficult for governments to effectively implement rational policies. For example, if you have your one talk working at a government department, say NID, and there are processes to follow, but you, because he is your one talk, you went around and saw him without following the line and the cues and the process in place. So what you're doing is that you are engaging in informal decision, informal process that will affect the governance process because of your cultural tie to your one talk working in the NID office. So that affects the governance process. Number 3 is intense pressure from the members of parliament. Local politicians are always come under pressure from their constituency as a result of the constituency wanted the members to complete small projects around. When members are not following due processes in delivering projects and giving out development to various groups without following process, that affects the governance process. Or take for your elected officials, not willing to address difficult situation or difficult issues in the village, for that matter. So the examples here on page 5 are talking about the process. Remember, government is an institution. It has laws and it has process. But whether those laws are followed is a matter of governance. Government acknowledges this process and institution, but the process in which to get there is a matter of this idea of governance. So governance is talking about the process. Government are the institutions and the laws that is given to us in a structure. Okay. The administration of the process is a matter of governance. Now, importance of politics and government. Okay. Government is important because it provides the boundaries in which politics is organized in such a manner that freedom, individual rights, and liberty is valued and accepted, so that the community can live, or the society can live in harmony. Okay. Now there are how many? 6 listed here. The first 3 are: governance is important to politics because it ensures order. Okay, governments establish laws and regulation to maintain order and stability within the society, whereas politics, okay, in which politics operate in, okay, representing citizens. For example, politics provide platform for citizens to voice their concerns and elect representatives to the govern on their behalf. You can achieve that through an established government in which politics operate in. Okay, allocating of resources. Governments distribute resources such as funds, infrastructure, and develop services to meet the needs of the population. Okay, we talked about politics as being gathering on page 1, collective activity, reconciliation. So politics cannot exist without government. So the importance of politics and government provides these laws here, ensure that there is order. Government ensures there is equal representation. Government ensure there is allocation of resources. Government ensures that the politics or protection of rights, promoting development, fostering diplomacy. So all these occurs. So government ensures that there is framework in which politics operate. So that is the importance of politics and importance of government to politics. Now, in conclusion, understanding politics and government is essential for comprehending the dynamics of society and the mechanism through which collective decisions are made. In our lecture video here, we've talked about politics, government, and governance. Politics is an activity of collective decision making. So politics cannot exist without government. Government provides structures in which politics happens. The administration of those structure, whether it follows the government rules and regulation, that is the process of governance. So we have whether it follows through and it results in the output and the outcome that we wanted, transparency, accountability, then we accept and appreciate the process. This falls under good governance. And like Papua New Guinea, the challenges of good governance are the informal, unaccountable and informal decision making, the cultural tradition, and goes back to our local leaders. So with that, thank you for joining us, okay, in exploring this idea of government and politics in Unit 1, and I will make lecture videos in the following topics that will come. Please keep an eye on these lecture videos.